Rashi, you can start.
Yeah. Om Sehna Bhavatu Sehno.
Start with 3 ohms.
3 ohms. Okay. Okay. Om. Om. Shall I? Om Sehna Bhavatu Sehno Bhunaktu Seh Virya Karvavahe Tejasvinavadhimamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Sadashiva Sambharam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharyam Paryatam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Saraswati Namustabhyam Varde Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Karpanya Doshopahat Svabhava Prakshami Twam Dharma Sammudacheta Yakshreha Snahi Nishchitam Bruhitan Me Yishyaste Ham Shandimam Twam Prapannam. Om Vanme Mansi Pratishtita Manome Vachi Pratishtitam Aviraviryam Meghi Vedasya Ma Anistata Shrutam Me Ma Prahasiha Anena Dhitena Ahuratran Sandhagami Ritam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanma Vavatu Tadvaktaram Bhavatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Bhadram Karnebhyah Shrunuyam Devah Bhadram Pakshme Makshurabhriyam Jatraha Isthira Ange Gestu Vang Swastananubhiha Vyashiv Devhitam Yadahu Swastina Indro Vadrashavaha Swastina Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastina Stakshruha Arishtanebiha Swastino Brahaspatir Dadatu. Om Aham Vrashakshariva Kirtiha Prashtam Girerira Urdhav Pavitro Vajaniva Sumratmasme Dravidam Sarvachasam. This is, I'm sorry. Dravidam Sarvachasam Sumedha Amratokshitaha Iti Trishang Korveradhanuvachanam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sorry, it was too many mistakes.
Thank you, Rashi. So a couple of things. One is, first of all, that was a very, very good first attempt. We have shared Shloka Ucharan from Aparna Didi. It's very, very accurate. So please use that to practice. Okay, that's the only way. Then these shlokas have a very powerful meaning. Okay, they are not language. They are not words. They are sounds. And these sounds are very powerful if they are, if their pronunciation and enunciation is done accurately.
Exactly.
In fact, yesterday I was attending a session with the Swami Abhedanandji, where he's talking about, it's a series of 8 lectures. Yesterday was the second lecture. It happens, it's happening on every Saturday. He was talking about the Shloka Ucharan, he was talking about Mantra Jap, and he was talking about its meanings and how powerful they were. And it was very interesting because he talked about how mantras, basically everything that gets created in this world, before that gets created, it is physically manifested. There is a thought that gets created.
Correct.
That thought, everything in this world has a thought which pervades it. The thought is larger than the object itself. And then before that comes the sound. Every thought is associated with a sound. And that sound pervades the thought itself. The sound of the thought of the object, which includes that this entire cosmos, this entire universe. The thought is there, and then even bigger than that is the sound of the thought. The sound of the thought of the object is mantra of that object. Okay. So these invocation shlokas, when they are invoked appropriately and properly, they have enormous power to shift our consciousness, to lift our consciousness towards the higher goal. And that is why we always invoke them before every class, so that it connects us to the Lord, so that our patrata, our ability to receive the wisdom, the knowledge is increased. So that is why we are now attempting, that we've gone through so many classes. I think all of you are in a very good space now to start practicing them. Okay. What we will do is, so first of all, use these Aparna Didi's recordings. Please star those recordings and use them to practice for your, and just not just when your time comes to say this in the class, but every week, just spend 5 minutes to practice them. And that's how we will get better. And they are difficult, especially the last 2 shlokas are not easy to get. So use them, and if you find any difficulty, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help in whatever way I can. And after we have gone through one round with everyone, then we will do something that we had done in our class, in the Saturday class, where we spend the first 10 or 15 minutes of each class practicing the shlokas. So everyone would volunteer, just the way we have a roster this time. We'll have another roster that will start after the first round, where everyone's done this, where we will actually practice. Everyone will practice with us on the class. And we did that for quite a few weeks until everybody got a practice. And that helped to improve the pronunciation for everyone. Okay. But let's give this like a personal go first. And then we will spend that 15 minutes practicing the shlokas. It will help strengthen our sadhana much more. Okay. So yeah.
Let me just add to this, right? So, like Tuvina said, this is invocation shloka, where we are calling Bhagwanji. This class is not our class. This class is Bhagwanji's class. And he takes this class through all of us. We are invoking Bhagwanji within us to speak to Bhagwanji within you, taki you all experience that divinity.
We all experience that divinity.
And जब हम किसी को, when we have to call somebody, we should, if you call them with the wrong name or mispronounced name versus calling them with the correct name, such a big difference, right? In terms of the bhav and the experience.
And also because somebody may not even know.
So the
right?
person will feel loved. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make Bhagwanji feel loved. And this is where bhav comes in, which we talk about. Here, jo hai hamare, what we've received is an opportunity for seva. Now, either we can do that seva the way we do most other things, or we can do it with the bhav, with this purpose that no, I will practice and I will do it in a way that he feels moved by my effort to come and sit in this class, right? Um, yeah, and like Tuvina said, it's just a matter of us putting a little bit more effort in the effort, and we'll all get it. And we'll happily help wherever we can.
Okay. The most important thing is you're volunteering. That itself is a very big seva. Now we will take that one step further, right? By practicing a lot more. Okay. And Kakuli has very kindly accepted the seva of chapter 3 chanting with me. So what we'll do, Kakuli, is I will read one shloka and you will follow after me. And if it is difficult to read the entire shloka together, we'll break it down. This is the only way we will get to learn. And I'll request everyone to chant along with us. Okay. Because there's nothing like there's no other way we learn except by practice. Okay. Let's start. Atha trityo adhyayah.
अथ तृतीयोऽध्यायः
Arjun uvacha.
अर्जुनुवाच
ज्यायसि चेत् कर्मणस्ते मता बुद्धिर्जनार्दन तत्
जाय
कर्मणि घोरे मां नियोजयसि केशव.
जायसि चेत् कर्मणस्ते मता बुद्धिर्जनार्दन तत्किं कर्मणि घोरे मां नियोजयसि केशव.
Very, very nicely done. Vyami shrenev vakyena buddhim mohayasiv me tadekam vad nishchitya yena shreyo hamapnuyam.
व्योमीश्वेदेव वाक्येन बुद्धिं मोहयसेव मे तदेकं वद निश्चित्य यानाश्रेयोऽहम् अप्नुयाम्.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Loke asmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam.
Shri Bhagavanuvaच लोकेऽस्मिन् द्विविधा निष्ठा पुरा प्रोक्ता मया नघ ज्ञानयोगेन संख्यानां कर्मयोगेन योगिनाम्.
न कर्मणाम नारंभात् नैष्कर्म्यं पुरुषोष्णुते न च संन्यसनादेव सिद्धिं समधिगच्छति.
न कर्मणम् अनारम्भान् नैष्कर्म्यं पुरुषोऽश्नुते न च संन्यसनादेव सिद्धिं समधिगच्छति.
न हि कश्चित् क्षणमपि जातु तिष्ठत्य कर्मकृत् कार्यते ह्यवशः कर्म सर्वप्रकृतिजैर्गुणे.
न हि कश्चित् क्षणमपि जातु तिष्ठत्य कर्मकृत् कार्येत ह्यवशः कर्म सर्वप्रकृतिजैर्गुणैः.
कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारस उच्यते.
कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य या आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारयस उच्यते.
यस्त्विन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभते अर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रिये कर्मयोगम् असक्तः स विशिष्यते.
यस्त्विन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभते अर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रियाय कर्मयोगम् असक्तः स विशिष्यते.
नियतं कुरु कर्म त्वं कर्म ज्यायो ह्यकर्मणः शरीरयात्रा पिचते न प्रसिद्ध्येद कर्मणः।
नियतं कुरु कर्म त्वं कर्माजयो ह्यकर्मणा शरीर यत्र चाते न परसिद्ध्यत अकर्मणा।
यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणो अन्यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्म बन्धनः। तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्गः समाचर।
यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणो यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्म बन्धन तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्ग समाचर।
सह यज्ञा प्रजा सृष्ट्वा पुरोवाच प्रजापतिः अनेन प्रसविष्वध्वम् ईश्वो अस्त्विष्ट कामधुक्।
सह यज्ञ प्रजा त्विष्ट्वा पुरोवाच प्रजापति अनेन परविष्टत्वम् एषो
अस्त्विष्ट
अस्त्वित कमदुक्।
Very nice. देवान् भावयतानेन ते देवा भावयन्तु वः परस्परं भावयन्तः श्रेय परम वाप्स्यथ।
देवं भवयतानेन ते देवा भवयन्तु वा परस्परं भवयता श्रेया परम् अभवस्यथ।
इष्टान् भोगान् हि वो देवा दास्यन्ते यज्ञभावितः तैर्दत्तान् प्रदायेभ्यो यो भुङ्क्ते तेन एव सः।
इस्तं भोगनि वो देवा दस्यन्ते यज्ञभाविता तैर्दत्तन् अप्रद्यावाव्यो यो भुक्ते तेन एव सा।
यज्ञशिष्टशिनासिन्तो मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषे भुञ्जते ते त्वघं पापा ये पचन्त्यात्मकारणात्।
यज्ञशिष्टासिना मुच्यन्त सर्वकिल्बिषे भुञ्जते ते त्वघं पापा ये पचन्त्यात्मकारणात्।
Nice. अन्नाद् भवन्ति भूतानि पर्जन्यादन्न संभवः यज्ञाद् भवति पर्जन्यो यज्ञस्कर्म समुद्भवः।
आनाद् भवन्ति भूतानि पर्जन्याद् अनसम्भवा यज्ञा भवति पर्जन्त्यो यज्ञा कर्म समुद्भवा।
कर्म ब्रह्मोद्भवं विद्धि ब्रह्माक्षर समुद्भवं तस्मात् सर्वगतं ब्रह्म नित्यं यज्ञे प्रतिष्ठितम्।
कर्म ब्रह्मोद्भवं विद्धि ब्रह्माक्षर समुद्भवं तस्मात् सर्वगातं ब्रह्म नित्य यज्ञ प्रतिष्ठितम्।
एवं प्रवृत्तितं चक्रं नानुवर्तयति यः अघायुरेन्द्रियारामो मोघं पार्थ स जीवति।
एवं प्रवर्तितं चक्रं नानुवर्तयति न ये अघायुरिन्द्रियारामो मोघं पार्थ स जीवति।
यस्त्वात्मरतिरेव स्यात् आत्मतृप्तश्च मानवः आत्मन्येव च सन्तुष्टः तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते.
यस्त्वं मारविवेस्
रेवस्या
विवस्यत् आत्मा तृप्तश्च मानवा आत्मा एव च सन्तुष्टः तस्य कर्मयं न विद्येत
नैव no worries नैव तस्य कृतेनार्थो न कृतेनेह कश्चन न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु कश्चिदर्थव्यपाश्रयः.
नैव तस्य कृतेनार्थो न कृतेनेह कश्चन न कस्य सर्वभूतेषु कश्चिदर्थव्यपाश्रयः.
तस्मात् सक्तः सततं कार्यकर्म समाचर असक्तो ह्यचरन् कर्म परमाप्नोति पुरुषः.
तस्मादसत्य सततं कर्मयं कर्म समाचर असुक्ता ह्यचरन् कर्म परम् आप्नोति पुरुषः.
Yeah, so 19 we have done till last week. So this week we will learn shlok 20. Karmanyaiva hi sansiddhim.
कर्माणैव हि संसिद्धिम्
Asthita janakadayah.
अस्थिता जनकादयः
लोकसंग्रहमेवापि
लोकसङ्ग्रमे मे यावापि
लोकसंग्रहमेवापि
लोकसङ्ग्रह मेवापि
सम्पश्यं कर्तुमर्हसि.
सम्पश्यतं कर्तुम् अर्हसि
सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि.
सम्पश्यतं कर्मणम् अर्हसि
सम्पश्यन्
सम्पश्यन्
कर्तुम्
अर्हसि
अर्हसि.
सम्पश्यं कर्तु अर्हसि
Yeah, कर्तुम् अर्हसि.
सम्पश्यं कर्तुम् अर्हसि.
Perfect. Okay. This is great. This is great. Thank you so much, Kakoli. So every week we will practice like this, one person at a time, unless the person who is volunteering feels comfortable to do the entire reading themselves. So I'll leave that to you, but we will keep this as the default mode where you will practice with me. Okay. And use this as a practice, not just for the person who is practicing vocally, but for all of us. Because in each class, we will take our sadhana one small notch higher, right? One small notch higher, and that applies to all of us. So we should use this as an opportunity to practice while the other person, like Kakuli was saying, but it is the same thing for all of us. So we'll slowly start to correct the small errors that come in to improve our diction as we go forward. Okay. And I must share this with you because in our Sunday class also, in our Saturday class also, there are a lot of people who come for the class who do not speak Hindi or do not understand Hindi. But their diction over a period of time because of their sadhana is so perfect that I'm amazed, right? Like it's like really nice. So it is just a factor of the sadhana, and it comes out, right? There are so many people who would be like, there's no way I can read, like, you know, they would start off with like, no Kumar, I don't want to read, I cannot read. And today they are so amazing, like they've learned the entire thing by heart, and some of them are very good singers, so they're able to even sing it really well. So it's just a matter of practice, and we'll all get there eventually. So thank you, Kakoli, so much. Now we will get to the start of the class. So we've spent considerable time in the last few classes trying to understand how to discern an action within an action, or an action within an inaction, as well as inaction within action, right? So some of the important things that we learned in the last class itself, and the last two classes were, Shloka 19, 20, all the way to 22, 23 that we've completed. How do we convert an action into an inaction? The first thing is, how do we start the action? The samarambh, as was spoken of in Shloka 19, the initiation of action. The initiation of action must be based on duty and not based on likes or dislikes. I like to do this, so I'll do it. I don't like to do this, so I won't do it. No, that is not the basis of an action. The basis of the action is that this is the ordained duty for me. This is the right thing for me to do, and not just the right thing for me to do. There are hundreds of actions that have been prescribed for in scriptures, but this is the right thing for me to do. That is my duty. I must do it. It is my duty to do so, right? So that is the initiation of action. While doing action, what is the bhav with which we are doing an action? And the action, the bhav should be seva bhav, yagya bhav, okay? And the results that happen after the action has been done, those results are offered to the Lord. There is no attachment to the end result. When we do an action this way, it creates that action. Even if there is a feverish amount of mental and physical activity that happens, it becomes an inaction. That means the seeds that get sprouted from that action, they become roasted. So they will not lead to any further bondage. It leads to freedom from bondage. And bondage of what? Bondage of cycle of birth and death. And what does such a karma yogi look like? What are the characteristics of such a person? One is that he is always content. What does content really mean? That means he's free from cravings of material objects. जो प्राप्त है वही पर्याप्त है. पर्याप्त किस लिए है? It is पर्याप्त, it is enough to do all my duties. Whatever I have right now is enough for me to do all my duties. But that doesn't mean that there is no craving at all. Basically, the craving for material objects gets replaced by craving for seva, craving for God realization. So you will always crave to do more. Crave to do more of what? Crave to do more of seva, Bhagwan seva, in whatever format it presents itself to you. It may present itself in the form of some seva of another person. It may be in the form of you listening to a friend who needs a listening ear. It may be in the form of doing your work in office or at home, or it may be in the form of doing your puja or swadhyay or whatever it may be, right? But there's always that craving for doing more, which means the person is not standing still. He is not content with that. This is my status of my seva, and this is where I will always stay. Your seva, the intensity of your seva bhav, as well as your seva in this world, has to always increase, consistently increase. Very, very important factor. And we must constantly do an evaluation of ourselves at a certain frequency, whether it's a weekly, monthly, quarterly frequency. We must constantly ask ourselves, what am I doing today that is a little bit better than where I was yesterday? So that constant improvement always has to be there. Okay. So there is contentment of material objects, but there is constant craving to get better at our seva. And this person, what is the second important characteristic of such a person? That he has transcended the dualities. What are the dualities? The dualities are the pair of opposites that we see in the material world. The material world itself is dual. Everything in this world is dual. Why is it dual? Because when God created it, he created it when he changed his unity to duality. Eko ham Bahusyami. That's how the world was created. So this world has been created because duality got created. So everything in this world is dual. There are two sides of the same coin. You cannot take one away from the other. If there is attachment, there would be hatred. If there is pleasure, there is going to be pain. If there is enmity, there will be friendship. If there is envy, there will be amity. If there is day, there is going to be dark. If there is cold, there is going to be heat. You cannot take these pairs of opposites away from each other. A person has transcended these dualities when he is no longer attached to these dualities, when he can see the truth of it. If something is coming and is causing him pleasure, he knows that this is going to go away. And hence there will be pain that will come right after this. As sure as the fact that if sun has risen now, the sun will set and the moon will rise. It is as sure as that. After sun comes night, after night comes day. So if there are very good circumstances, physical circumstances in our life today, know that this is only here for some time. Difficult times will follow. Make no mistake about it. So use this good time, like an easier time, to prepare yourself. Be grateful for this time of peace. Be grateful to God that there is this time for you to prepare yourself mentally, physically, emotionally for the tough time that will definitely come, and be in that state of gratefulness. And when the tough time comes, be prepared for it with fortitude. Deal with it with fortitude, and know that this time will also pass. Just as after night comes day, this is the time for fortitude, and then the good time will also come. Okay? So this person has transcended those dualities. He understands the truth about dualities, which also means that every time we start to say that this is right, this is wrong, we start to judge people, judge things, judge actions. Know that there is nothing to judge. Everything is a work of Lord, right? Where the duality is also that I, mine, and yours. That is also duality. This is mine, this is yours, is duality. Being able to transcend that, being able to go from I and mine, that I and mine is going to increase. It is not just me. It is not just my family. It is not just my friends. It is not just my school, my alma mater, not just my community and my country. Slowly, these boundaries will start to increase where we start to see unity in everything, right? This person is also free from envy. That's very natural to assume that when there is no yours or mine, then why will there be envy if you have something that I don't? If you have got it, it's the same as I have got it. Okay, so there is freedom of envy. And we also learned last time that envy is not just about, oh, why does he have that, right? It is very subtle. You're happy that your friend has got something, but then there is that feeling of abhav that comes in. Oh, I wish I also had this. That is also a source of envy. That comes from envy, right? Because it creates a sense of abhav in you. Okay, so that abhav has to go away, because जो प्राप्त है वो पर्याप्त है. मुझे मेरी जगह के लिए, in my circumstance, what I need, I already have. That person needs this for whatever reason, so he has got it. It is his life and his duty, right? Par dharma bhayavaha. Others' duty is very bhayanak for me. It is perfect for him, for his realization. Just as my duty, my circumstances are perfect for my journey. And he is even-minded in success and failure. That also comes from transcending of duality. Success and failure are dualities, right? So one who has, what this person is equi-minded, is even-minded, is in equipoise. Very, very important. So this equipoise is what we had learned in chapter 2. Samatvam yog uchyate. Samta hi yog hai. Equipoise comes, even-minded comes when there is yoga with the Lord. So if you are in equipoise with the external world, when you are even-minded in this external world, then you know that you are at that moment connected with the Lord. Samatvam yog uchyate. And then what does he say in the next shloka? Yogaha karmasu kaushalam. When we are in yoga, all actions are efficiently done. All our actions are very, very efficient. Okay. And then this kind of a person eventually becomes established in firm perception. He's in yoga at all times. And for such a person, Lord has given us assurance that even the all your past actions that have been done with a fruitive ambition, with a desire to achieve something, all those actions, the sanchit karma that create that bondage, will also get burned, just the way a spark of fire will burn an entire heap of straw. Just the same way, all your past actions will also get burned. And that is why it is absolutely possible to achieve that self-realization in this very small one human birth, despite of all the innumerable births through which we have done fruitive activities. Okay? So in this way, our life has to become a yoga, a havan, a home, a yajna, as an offering to the Lord. Our entire life has to become a yajna. What does this really mean in much greater detail is what we will read from here onwards. Over the next, up to like shloka 30, we are going to read what are the various types of havans or various types of yagyas, what they mean in our day-to-day life. What does it look like? Okay, and it will go from slightly at a very high level. We'll start from the highest level first, and then we'll slowly go down to the grosser levels of yajna. Okay, so let's start. Nandini, will you read with me? We had completed shloka 23 in last class, so let's start with the connection after that.
Okay. In the above shloka, the concept of yagna has been brought out. It was mentioned in shloka 10 of chapter 3 also. Now, in the next 7 shlokas, the Lord explains the idea of yagna in greater detail.
Brahmarpanam Brahma, Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi.
Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir.
Havihi.
Brahma Havir.
Not, there's no r. That r gets translated into 2 dots. So it is pronounced as ha. Havi.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Brahma Havir.
Brahma Agno Brahmana Hutam.
Brahmagno Brahmana Hutam.
Brahmaivtena Kantavyam.
Brahmaiva Tena Ganas
Kantavyam.
Gantavyam.
Brahma Karma Samadhina.
Brahma Karma Samadhina.
Brahma. So Brahma or Brahman is different from Brahma. Brahma is one type of energy. It is the creator energy of the Lord. Brahma is the creator of the Lord. So he represents the Rajogun, the Rajoguni nature of the Lord. Okay. Brahma is above Brahma. Brahma is only one aspect of the Brahman, the absolute. Similarly, Brahman is the same as Brahma, and it is different from Brahman. Brahman is one type of caste, one type of like we are Brahmans when we are doing literary activities like reading of the scriptures. Right now, all of us are being Brahmans. This is different from Brahman that is written here. Brahman is the absolute. Okay, refers to Brahman. So Brahma is the absolute. Arpan is making an offering. Brahma, again, same thing. Havihi. Havihi is in the havan, in the things that we, the dravya, the things that we put in the havan. Okay. Again, Brahma. Then Agno is the fire of the havan. Hutam is the activity of offering, the activity of the offering, doing ahuti, the kriya, the activity. Ten is that. Gantavyam is the fruit that is created after the Havan, the fruit, the result of the Havan. Karma is action. So Brahma Karma Samadhina, the person, the yogi who is placed in the actions of the Brahma. Okay. So here the view that is being explained is that of a Sankhya yogi, a Sankhya yogi's perception and how he does yajna. So this is the highest form of yajna, highest form, where you have completely transcended all dualities. How does this person perform yajna in his life? That is being explained here.
So one thing to observe is that in the Gita, Bhagwanji always starts with the subtlest, the most purest form of everything. So these few shlokas, we're going to talk about yajna. So he will start with the subtlest form of yajna, like what it looks like. And even the Gita, when in chapter 2 is Sankhya Yoga, right?
It starts from the subtlest
It
form of
starts with Tattva Gyan, the absolute subtlest knowledge he gives first. And you might wonder, why is he doing that? And there are a couple of reasons. One, for us to visualize what the end goal looks like. Start there, and then as we read the grosser version, find your anchors. Find where you can actually find relatability to act on.
And that's where you start.
And that's where you start moving towards. So even with yajna, this particular shloka is representative of a Sankhya yogi, but it gives us a flavor of what yajna means in the subtlest of form of what we need to achieve. Then it will go to more gross versions, which you and I then will relate to, because we are living that body consciousness.
So Brahman, the absolute, is the ladle. Brahman is the oblation. Brahman is the fire, and Brahman is the act of pouring oblations in the fire. For such a person, totally absorbed in Brahman, the goal attained is also Brahman. The yajna of the perceiver of Brahman. In this shloka, the self-realized person is being described, from whom the diversity of the phenomenal world has got totally dissolved into the absolute reality, the Brahman. For such a person, everything is Brahman. The performer, the actions, and whatever is being performed, all are Brahman. In this shloka, Havan, the ritual of pouring oblations into the fire with chanting of mantras, has been taken as an example. The ladle is the spoon-like object with which clarified butter or ghee is poured into the fire. The ladle, as well as the herbal powder, which is offered into the fire, are both taken to be aspects of Brahman. The performer of the yajna is also Brahman. The fire and the act of oblations are also aspects of the Brahman. Such a jnana yogi is always absorbed in the thoughts of Brahman. For such a yogi, nothing exists except Brahman, and the yogi is always one with the Brahman.
So a Sankhya yogi, and we've talked about this earlier as well, right? They are souls that do not identify with the body and the sansar at all. They are souls that have fully attached themselves to Bhagwanji. So everything that happens, even whatever they do, is something that Bhagwanji is doing through them. It is not their wish to do it. It is not their planning. It is not, they're using those faculties like Sankhya yogis would use, but they say they're not using it, it's Bhagwanji doing it through them. So, and they're very aware that they're just the observer, observing the gunas at play which creates the entire sansar and this entire Maya. And they're very aware that Bhagwanji through them is making them do X, Y, Z. Right? So their thoughts are fully steeped at any given point in time on Bhagwanji. So there is this book I all of you should pick up and read actually. It's by a Sankhya yogi called Om Swami, and it's his book on how he, born in India, he achieved at a young age, it's his memoir. At a young age, he built a multi-million-dollar business. At the age of 30, living in Australia, traveled the world, had a Porsche, had every name brand, etc. But he always knew his purpose of life was not this. And in that conversation where he attained enlightenment and he details what he went through, what the experience of enlightenment was, he said, when I achieved self-realization, walking, eating, and talking became difficult for me, not meditation. For us, it's the opposite. Meditation is difficult, but talking, eating, sitting about, chilling is easy. And he said, when you hit self-realization, there comes a time as a Sankhya Yoga that you are always so steeped in meditation that worldly activities become very, very difficult. And then he had to go through a process of learning on how to control his energy so that Bhagwanji could do his work through him. Right? And that's what this shloka kind of highlights, that they're so steeped in Brahman, they're so steeped in Bhagwan, that that's all they experience. And through them, work happens, and that's Bhagwanji's work. It is not because of them. It is through them that it happens. And that's it.
What is the book name again, please?
I think the name of the book is If Truth Be Told, and the person's name is Om Swami. So now he lives in an ashram in Himachal, and some of our Gita Parivar members have had the pleasure of meeting him in person. Not the pleasure, but the blessing to meet him in person. He's just an absolutely, like an example of a Sankhya yogi, right? Yeah, so this shloka reminded me of his state of mind. Okay, have you finished reading?
Yeah.
Elena, would you like to read the connection?
In the next shloka, the Lord speaks of two other types of performers of yajna.
Daivamevapare yajnam
Daivamevapare yajnam
yoginah paryupasate
yoginah paryupasate
brahmagnavapare yajnam
brahmagnavapare yajnam
yajnenaiva pajuhyati
yagnenaiva pajuhyati.
Dev is the devtas, the gods. Gods are lords, energies, various energies that sustain the world. Apare is dusre, others. Yajnam, yajna ko. Yoginaha, the yogis, the people who are connected to the Lord. Paryupasate, bhali bhanti anushthan kiya karte hain. They worship, they perform the yagyas and they worship this way. Brahmagne vapare. Brahma is Parabrahma, the absolute. Agna vapare. Agna is Agni, fire. So basically it means the absolute Lord in the form of the fire. Apare is others. Yajnam is yagya. यज्ञ नैवोपजुह्यति, यज्ञ के द्वारा ही आत्म रूप यज्ञ का हवन किया करते हैं. That means they they do the yagya through in the shape of their own self, and they offer their own self into the fire. Okay, let's read.
Other yogis only perform yajna in the shape of worship of gods. Still others pour into the fire of Brahman the very yajna in the shape of their self through the yajna of perception of identity. Worship of gods as yajna, merger of self in the supreme as yajna. In the first line of the shloka, the Lord speaks of worship of gods as a form of yajna. Such a worship is also yajna if done with sincerity and a spirit of complete surrender to gods. Some people worship gods with a mental reservation for getting some objects of desire. This does not constitute complete surrender and is not yajna. The worship done with complete faith and total abandonment to the deity would be called yajna.
Okay, so here
Continue.
no, so here we have to understand that gods is not the same as Lord, right? Gods are like forms of energy, or they are a small representation of the larger Lord, whether it is Vishnu Bhagwanji, whether it is Brahma, whether it is Saraswati or Lakshmi, or whichever gods that we pray to. People have, their Kul Devi, Kul Devta, right? They are all smaller energies of the Lord. So it is not, you cannot equate these gods to the Lord himself. You have to understand the difference. However, he's saying people worship the gods because that's how they sometimes relate to the ultimate Lord. And that's perfectly all right too. It's perfectly all right. We've seen the example of Meera and Krishna, right? She devoted herself to the Lord Krishna. Now, or there are people who are Vaishnavites and there are people who are Shaivites, right? It doesn't matter if you are praying to a particular god as your form of worship. It is the same as worshiping the Lord himself, because it is him too. As long as you're not worshiping the Lord, that particular deity, for achieving any particular desire. If you're doing that, then it has becomes a fruitive activity. Then you're creating bondage. Then it is not the same as yagya. Then it is not yagya at all. Okay. It becomes yagya, however, if you are praying to that deity just the way you would, like, you are doing this as a form of self-surrender, where you are taking everything as his offering, as his benediction, and you are devoting yourself to him. So this is called bhakti yoga, Miraji, or whether it is so that is the difference here.
So this is obviously far more relatable to us also, right? The first type, which is having complete surrender to Bhagwanji and giving up your sense of body consciousness, is very difficult. The second version we understand because and that's
Duality
why
is
we
there.
pray to idols. It's because those idols remind us to love Bhagwanji, the Bhagwanji inside of us. And there could be families that really pray and believe in Ganesh Ji or one version of a Bhagwanji, and that's also okay. As long as you're doing it as a reminder for yourself that everything I'm doing is for Bhagwanji, and using that as faith. Everything that happens is his wish. I'm doing it for him, and whatever happens is his wish. So whenever we decorate a house with different idols and pictures, and you go to people's houses, always just a beautiful way to constantly have them remembered inside of you, right? And use that as a tool, as a very healthy tool to evoke that Bhagwanji inside and the faith.
Yeah. So whether we do deity puja or whether we don't, either way is okay. Depends on our way of connecting. Some people connect very well through the deities or the murtis, and that's perfectly okay. And if you don't, that is also okay. It depends on our structure, who we are, what our sanskars are, what helps us get connected to the Lord. Right?
And that's something we'll talk about a bit more also, right? Because every day we step out of the house, every day we go interact with the world, the diversity of the world, the shiny glamour of the world. right? But being karma yogis, we have to do that. And when we come back, and if there is a murti, if there is a Bhagwanji around, it should serve as that reminder that, hey, I'm actually doing it for him, not for me. Right? And that's a very powerful way of doing yajna. That whatever action you've done outside, you may have forgotten, because that's where we are on our journey. But if you can come back home, you have that idol worship, you do your prayer in the morning, but if it reminds you to offer your work to him, then that's also a very, very powerful way of going about your day.
Continue. In the second line, another form is mentioned, which to be understood needs some attention. In this line, the supreme transcendence has been pictured as fire, and the individualized self is taken to be an oblation. In worldly life, the individualized self is involved in the diversity of the phenomenal world. By constant contemplation of the reality, all these diverse phenomena appear as transient and unreal. And by constant practice, the individualized self gets absorbed in the supreme. This is also a type of Jnana Yoga, but has slightly different hue from that mentioned in Shloka 24. In that shloka, the yogi sees everything as Brahman, the supreme, whereas the one mentioned here sees the diversity of the world as unreal and merges the individual self in the supreme. This has been called in this shloka an oblation of self, itself a yajna into another yajna. The supreme self thus achieving absolute perception of identity with the supreme.
So in Shlok 24, like we said, it was the Sankhya Yogi's vision of the world, right? So his way of doing the yajna. And this is called the Gyan Yajna. The second type of Gyan Yajna here, in the first one, everything that you see around you, you understand that to be Brahman. That you are Brahman, you understand that to be the Parabrahman. And you treat them with the same level of reverence. You act with them with the same level of reverence. The activity itself is done with reverence, right? Everything is, because everything is Parabrahma. In the second form, this is also Gyan Yoga. Why is it called Gyan Yoga? Because your intellect has to tell you that, and you have to identify so strongly with that intellect that you see that everything here is transient. It is unreal. It's like a play that is going on. This is not reality. It's just a play, right? So when you treat it like that, then that person is identifying himself as the Lord. So he understands there is a self inside of me. There is a Jivatma inside of me, which is the same as the Parabrahma. And he understands everything that is happening around him as unreal. So he's detached from the world, the activities, and everything around him. He doesn't treat them as Brahman, he just treats them as being unreal. And so is detached to it completely. He is at one with the Lord. This is his sense of identity, his sense of ego, his ahankar is completely given up to the Lord. And that giving up of that ego, the giving up of that ahankar is the yajna that he has done of offering it to the Lord. So this is also a type of Gyan Yoga. It is difficult to understand the exact difference between the two beyond, the superficial level, because we are not there yet. When you get there, you will start to understand the subtle differences between the two. And the one before this that we just read in Shloka 25, that's called the Bhakti Yoga. There is an entire 6 chapters where we will devote ourselves to Bhakti Yoga. From chapter 7 onwards, we will learn what Bhakti Yoga is in deeper detail. Okay, go on.
So actually, I can give you an example that will highlight the difference between the two, right? So in this book, right, that I referred to, Om Swami went through a lot of hardships and a lot of near-death experiences before he reached self-realization. And one of them was that he used to sleep in a room for several months, which was infested with rats, really big mosquitoes, and scorpions. And his guru, so to speak, forced him to live that life. And he used to not sleep on a bed. He only gave him a chadar. So he used to sleep on that little thin blanket, and he would just sleep there. And the first few nights, of course, mosquitoes bit him a lot, and the rats bit him. He could hardly sleep. But then a couple of times, or once, a scorpio bit him, right? And he had very firm dedication that I'm not going to kill a mosquito. I'm not going to shoo away a rat. I'm not going to shoo away a scorpio. Because if it is in my destiny to die now, then shooing away the scorpio will not change my destiny. There'll be some other way Bhagwanji will make sure I will die now. And if now is not the time to die, then this scorpio cannot do anything to me. Because at the end of the day, Bhagwanji is in him as much as he's in me. And he's the one controlling it. That is Sankhya Yoga.
That is
That is-
Shlok 24.
That
yes.
is that is Shlok
Brahman in
24.
everything.
Brahman in everything. I'm not doing anything. And after that, after he had this thought and realization, and after the scorpio bit him, no scorpio bit him for months, even though they were roaming around his bed and in his room and he was sleeping on the floor. Right? But that's how strong his belief was in Bhagwanji. In Shlok 25, the person, I would presume, because I'm not there, would do whatever it takes to be safe and interact with the diversity of the world.
No, actually, it's the opposite. He's treating everything as unreal. So for that person, the scorpions don't even exist. The rats don't exist. And if there is anything that happens, it doesn't matter. This is all unreal. It's unreal. It's even higher because he doesn't even perceive them. In the first case, he's like the Brahman. He would say the scorpion is the Brahman. The act
Okay.
of
So I
this thing is the
understand
Brahman.
differently. So
Yeah.
we'll take it.
Okay.
That's one of the sample that I wanted to add. If you Sri Ramana Maharishi, if you have heard of, so there was a cancer in his hand which has to be surgeoned out, and he was seriously ill and hospitalized as well. That time the cancer surgery happened with his eyes without any anesthetics also, because he insisted so, and he can just split the body and himself as a separate entity. And he insisted, he just told the doctors, and he's Ramana Maharishi, so he's a very renowned person living at that time from Tiruvannamalai. So they did the surgery. They were like, they have done nothing like that before. And the photograph is still in that hospital also. The how it has been done, how he was like just sitting idle through the entire journey of surgery, and they don't know how anyone could do that way. So that kind of flabbergasted the doctors also. So that was one of the example. I think it was kind of like relevant. I just wanted to mention it.
No, that's a good example. Thank you so much. In fact, it is very relevant to the next shloka that we're going to read. It will talk of this yagya. It's the yagya of the senses and the oblation of the sense objects. The very next one. So let's read. Rashi, will you read with me?
Now the Lord mentions two more types of yagna.
Shotradinindriyanyanye
Shrutadinindriyanyanye
Sanyamma agnishu juhyati.
Sanyamma agnishu juhyati.
Shabdadini vishayananya
Shabdadinin vishyananya
Indriyagnishu juhyati.
Indriyagnishu juhyati.
Shrotra.
Some other yogi. Okay, sorry.
Shrotra is auditory. Adi is etc. Indriyan, so Indriyani is senses. Anye is others. Sanyam, self-restraint. Agnishu is fire, in fire. Juhyati, offer or burn. Juhyati really means burning. But here it is used as an offering. Shabd, Adi, Vishay. So spoken word is used as an example, as etc. But Vishay is objects. So essentially sense objects. Anya, others. Indriya, senses. Agnishu, in fire. Juhyati is offered.
Some other yogi offers oblations of the senses, like that of audition, into the fire of self-restraints. Another offers oblations of the senses object into the fire of the senses. Self-restraints of senses, oblation of sense objects. In the first line, the Lord speaks of a yogi who keeps the senses in complete control by the force of willpower. This imposition of strict control has been pictured as offering the senses in the shape of oblations in the fire of self-restraints. In the second line, the Lord speaks of another type in which the yogi receives the stimuli from sense objects, but before those stimuli reach the mind, they are burned up in the senses themselves without causing any reaction in the mind. In this process, the impressions of the external objects are received by the senses, but the mind is kept in perfect check and it does not react. This is different from the yagna mentioned in the first line where the senses are restrained to the extent that they don't receive the stimuli at all. But in the second line, the process mentioned is akin to rivers and entering the sea and losing their identities in the roaring waters.
So this is interesting to observe a little bit and do a little bit of thought on, right? Whatever stimulation we get is through our five sense objects, right? Everything related to sansar and the world that we interact with, everything we know about it is information that we have collected through our five sense objects, right? So, and these sense and sense objects interact constantly in a very aggressive way, and they attach ourselves, which is why this oblation is very powerful. And it's mentioned as a separate Gita point, because when you offer, there are two types of it. One is, of course, one is where you can interact with the sense object, but not feel any cravings in your mind. So it is like when people.
So that would be outward, that we're not going out to
Yes.
crave for anything. That's the self-restraint.
That's the self-restraint, right? So the example that I can think of is somebody does a tap or a yagya of not eating bread, right? For whatever reason, for carbs. And there are two ways you experience it. One is you give it up, but you're craving it. You're thinking about it. You're like, oh, today I really want it. Today is a cheat day. Let me enjoy my cheat day, right? So you're doing the work of the self-restraint, but your mind is still hankering for it. That is not full yagya.
In fact, that's not yagya at all.
That is
because
not
it's
yagya at
called
all.
Hypocrite. A person who forcibly keeps his senses away from the sense objects, but is mentally attached to them, that person has been called a hypocrite. In chapter 2, we read a shloka there, remember? It says that such a person is called a hypocrite, very clearly.
Yeah. But a yagya is when that bread comes and everybody else is eating that bread. And you can smell the freshness of that bread, the warmth of the bread you can feel, but your mind is under full control. It remembers its purpose of why it's doing it. It invokes divine energy for you to continue on that tap, and you offer that sacrifice to Bhagwanji. That is yagya. And that's the second part of the yagya explained. And the first part is when you shut down the complete sense organ. So in the example here, they've given audition, which is speech. And we've done A lot of people have done it. Like even I've done it, Mom Vrat, right? Like that's what the Hindi word is, where people don't have given up speaking. So they can speak, but they'll say, "No, I don't want to talk anymore." And that's a second form, and even subtler form of tap, because now you've shut down an entire sense organ, and that requires a tremendous amount of willpower, right? And both of these are very powerful ways to remind your mind, to remind your intellect and mind to not focus on sansar, but focus on Bhagwan.
And another difference is that in the first variety, it is what we do with our senses in the external world that is controlled. Like the example Abhinav gave, Vani ka tap, Vani ka yagya. When we are not speaking, we're not creating. Okay, it's the same five senses we've seen in our the 23 the 23 modifications of gunas that we had seen. The same five senses are divided into two different parts. There is an external piece to it where they are called the five senses of action, and then there are five senses of perception. So the five senses of action are what is being controlled, where you're interacting out in the world. You're not going out to speak, controlling the Vanikata. So that would be an example. But on the other hand, there is the five senses of perception, where which we receive the stimuli. So here, in the example that Vijay gave, there is an operation being performed on the hand. So through our senses of perception, the yogiji is receiving the stimuli, but doesn't even reach the mind, right? It is completely burnt up. And there is no reaction in the mind at all. So he's feeling the pain. The body is there. There is no way you cannot feel that pain. The body will, that sense object will create that pain. As we had also read earlier, the seat of Rag and Dvesh sits in the senses. So as long as the senses are there, we will have that feeling. So that feeling of pain is there, but it creates no perception in the mind at all. There is no reaction. And hence he's able to sit there. That's the yagya he has performed in that moment there. Right? There's an oblation that he has performed. Very, very powerful example for oblation of the senses and sense objects. Thank you, Vijay. So Vijay, why don't you read with us the next one?
Having described some types of yajnas in the above three slokas, the Lord describes another type.
Sarvanindra karmani.
Sarvanindriya karmani.
Prana karmani chapare.
Prana karmani chapare.
Atma sanyam yogagno.
Atma sanyamya yogagno.
Juhyati jnana deepite.
Juhvati jnana deepite.
Sarvani is all. Indriya is the senses. Karmani, actions. Pran is the pran, the one of the basically the vital force in our body. Karmani, actions. Cha apare. Cha is and. Apare is other people, others. Atma sanyam. Atma sanyam yoga agni, the fire of self-control. Juhyati offers. Jnana deepite. Jnana is knowledge. Deepite, illumination. So illumination of knowledge. And what is the knowledge? The knowledge of self-realization.
Other yogis offer the activities of the senses and those of prana, the vital power, in the fire of self-restraint, achieved by illumination of self-perception. The yajna of self-restraint. In this type of yajna, the impulse of external stimuli are received by the senses, but the senses and passage of prana, the vital power, are held complete check in samadhi. The attainment of complete self-absorption in the illuminated state of self-perception. It may be said here In the deep sleep too, there is no experience of activities of senses or of the vital power. But in deep sleep, there is a strong cover of complete ignorance due to total numbness of intellect. On the contrary, samadhi is state of complete super consciousness.
So here we have taken there is another layer of self-restraint that is being talked about, and that is that of samadhi. Samadhi is a state of super consciousness. Even though, so the way a person feels or his action is his body and how his senses are in a state of samadhi, they are the same as if you were in a state of very deep sleep. So in very deep sleep, your actions, your senses, they are not able to perform any kind of actions, right? All your five senses of perception, five senses of action are completely subdued. Samadhi is also the same as that. The difference being that in deep sleep, your intellect also sleeps. So you're not thinking, you're not seeing, you're not perceiving anything. In samadhi, it is a state of super consciousness, a deep sleep, but being fully awake. You are in complete touch with the Lord in samadhi, which means that your consciousness has expanded beyond your body also. In a state of samadhi, they say that a lot of yogis have been able to transcend the body and they are able to do stuff like even astral travel. So it is that state of super consciousness. You can hear everything, you can see everything, you can smell everything. That's a big difference between deep sleep and samadhi in an internal manner. But externally, it feels the same as if a person is sleeping. When you look at that person's body, it feels that way. It's completely immobile. Okay? So that is another form of yajna, to be able to get to do samadhi. It's one type of yajna. Now we'll get to much grosser types of yajnas, which we will have much easier way of relating to and being able to see how we have ourselves done these type of yajnas in some form or the other a lot of times in our lives. Who will read with me today? Venkat, are you there? Oh, Rishabh is also there. Rishabh, will you read? Okay. Is the connection?
Sure. Some more types of yajnas are now described.
Dravya yajna, tapo yajna. Okay, here there is a sa in between. Dravya yajna, sa. And similarly in the next word also there is yoga yajna, sa. So we won't say the sa in between these two words. Okay, it will be replaced when we are saying, it will be replaced with the halant, the two dots, which will be pronounced as ha. Okay. Dravya yajna, tapo yajna.
Dravya yajna kya pyo yajna.
Yoga yajna tatha pare.
Yoga yajna ka tapare.
Swadhyaya yajnan yajnascha.
Swakyajna yajascha.
Swadhyayana yajnascha.
Swatyajna yajascha.
Yataya sanshita vrata.
Yataya samshita vartaha.
Vrata.
Vrata.
Dravya. Dravya really means the things we use for the havan. When we do the havan or yajna, the things that we put in it. So here, dravya refers to the material acquisitions we have in our lives. Any kind of material acquisitions. Okay. Yajna is yajna. Tap is austerities that we may do. Okay. Then yoga, it refers here to the Patanjali's yoga. The Patanjali's yoga. Then yoga, yajna, tathapare, others, yet others. Swadhyay is the self-study, the swadhyay that we always refer to. Jnana is knowledge. Yatayaha is a yatanshil purush, people who make effort. And what kind of effort? Unrelenting effort, not casual effort. I'll do it today, I won't do it tomorrow. No, 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 no. Unrelenting effort. You will fall, you will get up again, and you will try again. And that doesn't mean that all the action that you will do will be successful. You will try, you will start some tap, it may fail, but that doesn't deter you. Your determination is still there. You get up again and you try doing it again, practice again. Sanshita vrata. Vrat is the word basically means tikshna vrato se yukt, meaning a person who has very strong vows, a person who is very determined. So what does this mean? That the austerities that are being described here, these are grosser level of yagyas, but how they must be performed for you to be a person who's actually performing them shouldn't be casual. There must be a strong vow to do it, and there must be a strong determination, and there must be an unrelenting effort being put into it.
What is the word again? Dikshanya?
Sanshita vrata. Tikshna vrato se yukt. A person who has strong vows, very determined vows. Sanshita vrata. Vrat, the vows are very strong. Tikshna, determined. Yeah. Let's read.
Others offer their accusations and their austerities as oblations. Still others perform the yajna of yoga, of deep and intense scriptural study and the knowledge. All these being persons of rigid determination and of unrelenting exertion in practice. All these are explained below separately. The yajna of accusations. The utilization for general welfare of material acquisitions of any type earned by just and fair means without the desire of fame is also is yajna. It is not necessary that the performer may be a rich person. Acquisitions, however, big or small, can be utilized for this yajna. Construction of wells, temples, hospitals, schools, and the like, and selfless service of scholars, students, patients, with materials or even with the benign of sympathetic attitude would also be yajna of this type.
So this is what we learned even in chapter 3, the concept of doing things as lok sangraha, right? Which is in English translated as lok sangraha is greater good. Doing things for the greater good, not doing things for your own benefit or for acquiring things from the world. But are we doing our jobs so that it helps our company achieve its purpose, its missions? Do we serve our customers with the intent to make sure that we leave their businesses better off because they've interacted with us or they've purchased products from us? Are we leaving them in that state? Then we're constantly doing our job as lok sangraha for the greater good.
And the material acquisitions that we have, whether it is money, car, house, time, our vibhutis, the skills that we have, are we using them for greater good rather than just holding it for ourselves?
So I'll give you an example. You could be blessed with a wit, being able to have a sense of humor, a wit in any situation. Now that is Bhagwanji's gift to you, right? That you're born with that wit and that being able to see things that way. Now you can use that wit in a way to put people down by making them feel small. Or you can use that wit to diffuse tense situations, to make people feel comfortable when they're feeling anxious, by making light of a serious situation so people don't get too drawn into the sansar and the result of an action, that's your choice now. Bhagwanji is giving you that skill of having a sense of humor and a wit, right? But how you use it, do you use it for general benefit and for uplifting people's moods and making them happy? Or do you use it as a way to tease people, pull them down, make fun of them? That's your choice. And that is true for every single skill that we have. And it's true for every single work that we do in our sansar as part of our jobs.
And then extending it to the other material acquisitions. For example, if you have time, you in Singapore, there is this concept of, like, I don't know, helping people or like devoting your time and effort to charitable services. For example, you can associate yourself with Willing Hearts, and then you can go and distribute food, or you can go and to, less fortunate householders. You can go and help in cooking food, packing food. So, there are different types of activities that you can volunteer for. Now, if you do that, that is a type of this yajna, because you're using, for example, you have a car, you can use that car to go and distribute the food. That's a yajna of your material acquisition that you have. You're putting it to good use. The time that you have, you're using it for charity. That's an example of this. But doing this in an unrelenting manner, your effort should not be casual. Today I have time, so I will go do it. Tomorrow I don't have time, I want to go and have fun, I will not do it. That should not be the attitude. And then it is not yajna. Yajna means if you have put down time to do something, you're doing it consistently and you're making time for it, then it is yajna. Right? Determination is going to be strong. Yatnasheel Purush, person who's making an unrelenting effort. Whatever we are going to do should be on a constant basis, right? So if we are doing charity, for example, of money, so doing it like, okay, once in like years, that doesn't make you a charitable person. Are you doing something on a consistent basis according to your means? Whether it is $10, whether it is 50, whether it is 500, depending on our means. The amount of means is not important. Anybody you don't have to be rich to do something for this kind of a yajna. Whatever be your means, how are you utilizing them with effort and determination on a consistent basis makes this a yajna. Because getting that consistency will extract effort from you. Doing it once in a while in a casual manner doesn't constitute yajna. That is very important to recognize. We'll move on.
Yeah. The yajna of austerities, fasting and bearing physical and mental sufferings gladly for righteous dealings, living an austere life, giving up food and being totally unmindful of heat and cold, all for self-realization constitute this type of yajna.
So
The
example that is being given here is to give up food, right? Now, it doesn't mean giving up all food. It could be giving up some type of food. Now, a lot of us have done it at some point of time in our life in some fashion or the other. And it is also a fad, right? Like all kinds of diets. Diet would be a form of austerity that we are inflicting ourselves, subjecting ourselves to, right? What is the purpose of giving up that food? Is it to look good, to look beautiful, or is it for us to achieve self-realization? Through that process of austerity, what we learn about ourselves, and through that austerity, how our body feels, and does it become stronger and healthier to be that temple of God? What is the purpose with which we put ourselves through an austerity is this example.
All the dieting and austerity that Tuna is referring to, end of the day is an opportunity for you to clean your antakaran. It's an opportunity to strengthen your mind. It's an opportunity for you not to listen to your mind and follow your intellect. But it can be a slippery slope if you allow your ego to come in and say, I'm doing it to receive praise from the world. And then all of a sudden, instead of it being a yajna, it very soon becomes more bondage. Because if someone doesn't praise you, you experience suffering, right? And while fasting, bearing physical, mental sufferings, we don't need to go and look for them. But in our lives, they come constantly.
True.
There will come a day where your AC will not work. Then will you complain? Or will you say, Bhagwanji is giving me an opportunity to do this physical hardship as a yagya to him?
All kinds of abhav that you may sometimes experience can be used as an opportunity to do the tap, to do the yagya of austerity, or you can use it to entangle yourself further in the material world.
And it exists at the bhav level. Because if Bhagwanji wants, your AC will not work and you will sleep that night in heat. But you can choose to sleep that night in heat, in complaining and annoyed and saying, I really need a cup of coffee in the morning and go out and yada, yada, yada. Or you can say, this is an opportunity for me to do yagya, to let go of my attachment to this and move a step closer towards self-realization.
So you may end up having a fast like that because you are working too hard. You've skipped your breakfast, you've skipped your lunch, you've had to skip your dinner because of work. Are you going to be upset because of that? Or are you going to use that as an opportunity to do tap? So these are all, like you do, like he said, you don't have to look out for them. They will come as a part of our daily life. And even if you go out to look out for them, not everybody has to do them. You will know what is the path that you need to follow. For example, I am naturally inclined for a tap of food for whatever reason. I don't understand why I am always inclined to it. It attracts me. Okay. And my body responds to it. I'm able to do fast. And there are times when I'm not able to do fast because of my mind is like very chanchal. But Abhinav cannot do that. He's not attracted to that type of fast. And even when he tries to do that type of austerity, his body reacts quite badly. He falls sick. So all of us will have our own path to do our yagya and our own ways of achieving realization. Okay, we have to find our own path and do that activity that appeals to us, that is available to us and becomes a part of our life. It will naturally come to us. We don't have to force ourselves into anything. We go on. I'm aware of the time is 12:03, so I'm sorry. We'll just quickly, or maybe we'll come back to this. We'll let us read this. There are a lot of yagyas here, so we will complete in the next class. Okay, already 12:03, and I don't want to rush through all of this. Okay, so we'll do the closing shlokas. Rashi.
Sarvesham swastin bhavatu, sarvesham shantin bhavatu, sarvesham punnam bhavatu, sarvesham mangalam bhavatu. Om sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kadishchit Dukha Bhagavate Maya Astoma Jyotirgamaya Astoma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnatma Purnamadushyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you so much, Rashi. That was really nice.
Sure.
In the next class, Invocation shloka is with who? Okay, we'll check out the Excel sheet that Vijay has created, and I'll put the name. So please practice the invocation shlokas for next week. Use the recordings, and if you need any help, reach out to me. And I think in the next class,
Bhagyashri.
Bhagyashri. Okay, perfect. So Bhagyashri will do the invocation shlokas, and I think chapter 3 chanting is probably with Abhinav. So I'll request that the rest of you who have not put your names in for both the sevas, please go ahead and put in your names. Don't be afraid. We will do it together. We'll do we'll do it in a manner that we did today. So, just follow me while we do the chanting. But it's very, very important part. I know some of you might question as to like, why do you need to learn the shlokas, or why you need to you need to even chant or know how to chant them. But in some of these cases, to just trust the system. It's like, when you're told to learn your tables, you're not sure, like that kid might not know why it is important to learn those tables. But you will eventually realize how important and easy it becomes to do your calculations when you know your tables versus when you don't. So please keep making the effort to learn the shlokas, and please send me your your chantings. It's very, very, very important, and this is important for our own sadhana, right? So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.